Evening, depending on where you're joining me from. Happy Motivational Monday. I'm going to back up here a little bit. This is Deb, Vibration Training Specialist. And today, some of you are already into the golf and gardening season. Some of you live in areas of the world where you get to do those things all the time. Back in my studio days, one of the classes, I used to run all kinds of different crazy classes on vibration machines in groups because it was funner and it helped motivate everybody. But one of my most popular classes was golf and gardening. Not only does it, go together because of the G's, but there's a lot of similar things as far as the muscle groups in our body that we're utilizing when we're doing golf and gardening. And where I live in Canada, it's certainly a seasonal sport. So in the spring and the summer, I do golf and gardening, and in the winter, I do skiing and snowboarding and snow shoveling. So a lot of times, there's muscles that we're using that just aren't conditioned because we're getting into seasonal activities, seasonal sports. And some of the ways that you can use your vibration plate is to keep those muscle groups conditioned in the down season, help you prepare for the season. Or if you're in the season all the time, there's lots of things you can use your machine for to not only improve your game, but to diminish the deficiencies. If you start developing concerns within the body, there's some preventative things that you can do. And one of the things with golf and gardening is there's little bursts of activity, movements that require a lot of exertion on your part. And both sports, I'm going to consider gardening a sport. Golf and gardening are very one-sided. So you swing left or you swing right, or when you're gardening and pulling weeds and putting plants in the ground, you tend to use, your dominant hand. So with those repetitive things, and we're exerting ourselves with these bursts of, there's a lot of energy when you're swinging that golf club, but it's a one-sided thing. I was reading a really good article from Men's Journal, and the article was talking about, wouldn't it be great if we were all ambidextrous and we could do the first 9 with a right swing and the last 9 with a left swing. So, golf and gardening are some of those activities where you can develop muscle deficiencies. You certainly develop imbalances. Hello, Kim Johnson. If you are joining me today for some of my golf and gardening tips, please tell me where you're from. If it is golf and gardening season where you are, or maybe you're one of those lucky people that just gets to celebrate those seasons all year, but you don't get the snow and the skiing. And I don't know what I prefer. In the middle of winter, I like summer, but in the middle of summer, I miss my snow sometimes. So we're going to go over a few exercises today. I have tools. I got a couple of clubs, and I brought my big garden trowel. And, one of the things I want you to think about if you are getting back into the season, or you're just finding that you've got deficiencies, especially post-golf and post-gardening, sometimes it's an imbalance. And like I said, if you're doing 75 to 100 right swings, that left side's, acting more as the stabilizing group of muscles. It's not launching the power. And sometimes you can develop deficiencies from overuse of those muscles. Repetitive things, you do a lot of weeding, you're bent over in that position for a really, really long time. So sometimes in the middle of these seasons, when you're out and you're being active, which is where we want you to be, it doesn't mean that you still have to commit necessarily to a big workout. Maybe it's doing a little bit of warm up or a little bit of recovery and adding a couple of these exercises before you go to the course or the plot of dirt. And you'll find that not only are your activities more fluid, you've got more stamina, more range of motion and balance, but long term, it's really working towards that preventative piece and mitigating and minimizing injuries. So we're going to get into a couple of things today. What I will ask you to do is, if you have questions, I'm going to give you some time to drill me at the end of today's session. A couple of things I'm going to show you today are probably not things you see people doing at the gym. I'm all about functional training. So what is it that you do in your 9 to 5? A lot of the exercises or activities that you can do on your plate should mimic the sport or the activities that you're doing, make them more fluid, improve them when you're in those situations. So I've got a couple of tools here today. Literally, I have tools today. We're going to start with golf clubs, and I've got some notes here I got to bring with me because I didn't write big girl notes where I can see them today. But if you're going to get out on the course, if you're going to be doing some gardening and you're not conditioned, you're not in the season, I always recommend a little bit of a warm-up before you do your exercises on the machine, or perhaps you do your stuff in the garden. I know we've had nice weather for the first time in a really, really long time. And I've probably been out there. I decided I was going to build a patio box. So I've been digging out sod for the last 3-4 days. And normally I would feel, I have bad knees, so kneeling down usually just kills me. I did a little bit of time on the machine, and I did a session on Friday, so I was feeling pretty good. But it's my elbows and my shoulders that I'm feeling the leftover in today. So, listen to your body. If after you've been in the garden, or you know where you're sore after that round of golf, use it as a recovery tool. So the positions I'm showing you today can be warm up, they can be wind down, or they may just be additions that you're going to add to your existing routine. We're going to be working in oscillating mode, side to side. The reason for that, it's the fundamental movement of whole body vibration. It all started with this type of movement. It feels the most natural. This is how we walk across the floor. And every Lifepro model has oscillating. So if you don't have a vibration plate right now, any of the exercises that I am showing you today, the moves are universal. You could do them on any of the plates, but my demonstrations are always in oscillating, that teeter-totter, that micro movement of walking is what it feels like. We're going to assume that you're all fairly fit today, and we're going to get right into some standing exercises. Before, I don't need all my accessories yet. We're going to warm up first off with a little bit of a pelvic tilt. Now, when you're golfing, when you're gardening, it's about that core group of muscles, I say from the knees right up to those armpits. And I want you with your feet about hip width apart. Just let the machine kind of loosen and shake and move you. And once you feel stable and you've had about 30 seconds, I want you to get into some pelvic tilts. So we're going to tilt the bum forward, backward. I just want you loosening up the core. If you're heading out and it's later in the day and you've been sitting at a desk all day or sitting in a vehicle driving, you're probably stiff. So even just a couple minutes before you go out, you're going to feel a million times better, and you're going to prevent injury. That's another thing if you're just starting an activity seasonally again. So speed-wise, I want you to about probably the mid-range. My machine goes 60 speed, so I'm going to be in the 30 to 40 range. If you're finding feet hip width apart is too intense, bring the feet closer together. So the first little warm-up we're going to do, golf-related, you can do this with a garden shovel. You can do this with your golf club. All we're doing is we're tucking that club or that shovel behind the back. We're going to hang on to it with the elbows. I want you taking your hands, putting them on your tummy. And I want you turning at the waist. I don't want you turning at the knees, the ankles, or the hips. And what I mean by that is I don't want you doing this. Okay? I want you just turning, hold, 2, 3. So it's just kind of from here up. Hold, 2, 3. Good posture. The chest is out. We are breathing. Okay. 2, 3. Do about 8 to 10 reps. This might be just a warm-up that you do while you're standing there now on the ground. By adding the machine, we're getting more circulation, more lymph. Maybe we're doing this as more of a squat because we want to strengthen our legs and our glutes, which are also very important for golf and gardening. So that's just one example. Another one, you can go a little higher up. Stick your shovel or your club behind your neck with your hands on the ends. This one, if you felt comfortable, you could do a couple more rotations. But what I'd like you to do here, we're going to do a little variation with this one. We're not going to actually touch our knee, but we're going to lean over at about a 90 degree. If you've got a trouble back and this is hard for you, you can stand up a little taller. But try and get as close to a 90 degree as you can. And we're just going to do the same movement. So turn, hold for 2 to 3 seconds, center, hold 2 to 3 seconds, center. Again, 8 to 10 reps. You'll feel this more in the mid-back, kind of under that bra strap. I don't know how else to describe it. So use the tools you have, okay? Everybody's probably looking at me right now, and you know what just feels really natural? Again, I'm all about functional training. why couldn't you practice your swings? I don't have enough room in here without hitting my wall. But this is another way. I've done a number of golf tournaments where we put these in the clubhouse or after, and a lot of guys will just practice a few swings on it. You know, maybe flexibility in the hamstrings and the low back is an issue. Let's do some toe touches. If you are unable to get lower, like if you can't touch your feet or your hands to the ground, don't do this. That's not a stretch. It's not about how far down you can get. On this one, you're almost locking those legs. And just go to the point where you feel a good stretch up the calves and the hamstrings. And just hold for 2 to 3 seconds. And then come up a little bit and stand back up. This is not only a good stretch for the back of the legs, but it's awesome. Going to add some strength to the low back as well. Stretching it out a bit as well. Do another rep. I'd like you to do 3 to 4 reps of this if you're feeling comfortable. If you would like to do this, but this position scares the heck out of you because balance and stability just ain't there, turn sideways on your platform. Put your heels in the center of it. Have your stool beside you for guidance. Drop the club. And just practice with something to hang on to. Okay? You can start this way as a variation. Okay? For those of you that are okay, we're doing, like I say, 3 to 4 reps on this one. We're going to hold. Make sure you're breathing. Just slowly back up. Okay? Kind of just feels cooler with a golf club than just doing it without one. Just saying. And again, you know, for many of you that are looking, I am not a golfer, but, you know, practicing in an environment that makes your position more challenging, it's kind of a logical thing. If you want to improve your game, get a step and get a ball on here. Just practice some of those movements, you know, the clench of the glute, the follow through, whatever you're trying to develop, doing those positions, mimicking them on a plate is a really good way to improve your form. Okay, so those are a couple variations. The next one we're going to get to is some seated twists. Now this is something, you know, maybe you're already at the clubhouse and you didn't have time to do it. I prefer doing everything on a machine. This one we're going to add a ball to it. You can do this one, like I say, seated in a chair. Oh, I hit the button. There we go. When I'm seated, I prefer a little bit of a higher speed range, so I'm mid to high on this. I'm going to bring this one up to about 40 to 50. There's more padding. We can take a higher setting. I want the ball just between the legs. I want good posture. And that same position we did standing, we're going to put that golf club, hook it in the elbows, and we're just going to turn. Hold, 2, 3. Hold, 2, 3. Again, about 3 to 4 reps aside, and I think you'll feel good to go. You'll probably notice your range of motion improve very quickly. Retaining it is sticking with it, guys. Consistent, regular use. All right. We could also mimic the other one. We'll put this up behind the neck. We're hanging onto the club with our hands, and we're just going to turn. Okay. Do what feels good to you. These are just some ideas. And we can lean forward. You'll feel those hamstrings stretch. Make sure your legs are straight out in front of you and you're relaxed on the heels. And the whole time we're holding this ball between our legs, it's working our inner and our outer thighs as well. Every little bit adds to the equation. Okay, so those are just a couple of examples. Another very important thing when you're, especially with golf and gardening, is the glutes. Okay, for the gardening, it's because, you know, we're doing this constantly, okay? So for my gardeners, see my fancy new trowel? Mimic what you're doing. Get down on the ground and stand back up. You can do squats, or you can do things that are more functional, perhaps. Again, you're going to have one side that you typically favor over the other. You know, if you want to work on imbalances, maybe alternate hands while you're doing this. Switch hands. This is the most natural human function. This is how we used to poop in the forest. This is how we used to deliver babies. Modern conveniences, the chair, the toilet, many of these things have affected our range of motion. And many of us on the ground look like this, where we have to be up on our toes. Ideally, and I recognize everyone isn't there, but you should be able to keep your feet flat-footed, come all the way down, and stand back up. Something to work towards if you're not there yet. But you would do, I don't know, 8 to 10 rotations. Okay, it's not even bothering my knees. Okay. The next one we're going to get into for glutes is a bridge. So hang on, I'm going to move the machine a bit. A bridge is a really good exercise, not just for the glutes, but if you are dealing with a low back or a weakness in the low back pain, things like that. I like doing bridges because they're kind of like doing a mini plank, but we don't wrench the back because we're facing the ceiling versus facing downwards. If you've seen any of my core sessions, I've shown you how to do a plank variation on this. So for your bridge, there's a couple of variations I'd recommend setting-wise. Woo! If you want a wider foot position, you're going to have more wobble, and I would recommend a slower speed. Slower speeds are more about destabilization, wobbling that body, very much like a Bosu ball. If you find that uncomfortable and you prefer to bring your feet closer together, you'll probably find going a mid-speed, a little faster will be tolerable. But if you're going too fast with your feet too wide, your legs are kind of coming in at an angle. So you may slide. So if you feel like you're sliding off the plate, you're probably going too fast for the combination of the width of your foot. So I'm going to do this relatively slow because I like my feet wide. I'm just setting this at a speed of 10. My feet are very wide. We're going to lay down on the ground. And we're going to lay our arms down on the ground beside us for support. And we're simply just going to lift that bum up off the ground. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. And back down. And lift again. If this is easier and you're doing these type of exercises now, whatever variation you would like to work on or you may be working on now, the premise is I want you targeting the glutes. And if you're not doing bridges, it's a really good way to get started in strengthening that area, as well as I said, strengthening the low back. Now, for those of you that have been doing bridges a long time and you want a little bit more challenge, bring your feet a little bit closer together and just do one leg. So it's almost like your knees are hinged together. Lift, and that's going to put all of your weight onto that one side. And lift. Again, 3 to 4 reps on this one. And then, of course, you'd want to switch sides. So just a variation. This one's too hard to do with your feet wide if you're just starting out. Bring your feet closer to the center. Once you get a little bit more core strength, you can go wider. Just a couple of variations. And the very last one I want to show you, because for me personally and for a lot of my clients, what's left over is the low back, the fatigue, the pain, tension. You know, with golf and gardening, there tends to be an achy in the low back after we're done. So I just want to show you, I've shown in other sessions, but I want to show you how to do a back massage on the machine. Many of my ladies will do this to minimize the tire effect, if you know what I mean. This tire. I would bring your machine up, mid to high range. This is a massage. If you have an aerobic step or a block or something you want to place in front of the machine to give your upper body something to rest on, I'm going to rest on my forearms. So what this looks like, you can start by sitting down. I've got a mat on the machine. Whether you want padding or not is entirely up to you. Sit so you're almost at the opposite side of the plate and lay yourself down. And then just shimmy yourself up a little bit till you get that low back on there. And I like to lift my knees up. It gets more body weight into it. You can twist out to the hips, whatever kind of feels good. I love doing this one. When I'm already down on the ground, you may as well. And I don't massage everywhere all the time, but this is one seasonally. Just a lot of time in the garden, I do find I really enjoy this one. And again, a minute, maybe 2 on something like this is really all you need. If you find your back is really tense, you know, you could do this one just as a standalone, but sometimes getting up and down causes its own issues. I recommend at least a pelvic tilt or something as a warm up before you get down and start becoming a contortionist on the ground here. Okay, so that's just a variation I wanted to show you. I have Tic Tacs in my pocket and they're falling out all over the floor. Look at that. Okay, so just a quick recap. Golf and gardening, we're affecting a lot of the same muscle groups, and a lot of those muscle groups that are being utilized are exerted multiple times, but it's very one-sided. You're swinging with the right, or you're digging with the right or the left, depending on what your dominant hand is. So a lot of times, just weakness or imbalances can develop in the body because, we're giving her harder on one side than the other. So at the very least, use your plate to, balance off, maybe exercise some of the muscles that aren't your dominant side. Absolutely, you can use it as a warm up or a wind down and complement with your other activities. And if you do suffer with deficiencies, bad back or shoulders, all the more reason to just prepare the body, get it ready for the sport. And there's nothing more that I love than working with clients that are able to return to the activities that they've maybe abandoned because their body just hasn't cooperated, or they've had a setback. So I can tell you, years and years of customers returning to not just golf and gardening, but whatever activities it is that you love. A vibration plate is a really good way to bridge the gap and return to those activities, but it can also be a great way to keep those muscles conditioned, reduce the possibility of injury, and possibly, in the situation of a golf game, maybe improve your swing. And I've seen some of that too. So what areas you're trying to target. If you have exercises that you're doing specifically for golf or gardening or stretches, things like that, try incorporating them with your plate. You're not going to spend as much time doing them. You don't need to. You're going to get a little bit more overall benefit. And for me, it tends to be a little bit more fun. So I hope that offered some insight. I'm going to maybe see who has joined my ramblings today. Today we have Lynn from Buffalo, getting into the warmer weather. Yes, we all had our share of last minute snowstorms. Like we had a foot of snow a week ago. Facebook user on the waiver, what speed and program do you use? I'm not a set number or program. Every model kind of has its own suite, but generally speaking, if you were just starting out, I recommend starting with a lower foot position. It's not just the setting or the speed, it's where you place your hands or your feet. So the intensity is controlled by your feet. It's not about going as wide as possible. So start with a natural foot position, hip width apart or closer if you find it too intense. And starting out, I prefer a mid to higher frequency. I stated earlier in this session, those lower speeds, the wobble speeds, they're not always kind on bad knees, bad hips. They tend to be a little choppier, but they are very good for balance and destabilization. So if you're not dealing with deficiencies, you do yoga, those types of things, that's really what those speeds are ideal for. What's really important is that you mix it up. Consistency in using this thing regularly is really where you're going to see the results long term, but your body gets used to anything after a period of time. So if you are using it 2-3 times a week or more regularly, mix up your speed or whatever program you might be doing from week to week, or change your foot position. Do something to keep the body confused and challenged. If you just keep going through the motions, after a period of time, you're kind of just maintaining, and the body's lazy. It doesn't like to burn a calorie more than it has to. So we got to keep it guessing and changing to keep those changes moving forward. I hope that answered your question. I try not to be vague. I know a lot of folks out there, recommend specific settings or levels, and there certainly are guidelines that Lifepro provides you within that. But what I want you guys to do is realize that it's still very different for everyone. When you're on these machines, how it feels, your tolerance, your deficiencies. So it's important that you experiment and find out. I always speak ranges, mid-range, high range. And I do that for a reason. I want you to experiment within those ranges. And that's also the reason I suggest mixing it up. So, depending on what you're doing on the machine, my massage, sitting on the machine, that kind of stuff tends to be a higher speed level. If I'm doing squats or push-ups, usually the mid-range for me personally, But I never really exceed much more than hip width apart. I don't stand as wide as possible. I don't put my hands as wide as possible. It's more challenging for sure, but I prefer to be more functional in how I do my training. I'm 50 this year, so I got to be a little bit more proactive in that